Ichimon Japan is made possible by Patreon support. Sean, thank you so much for joining the $3 a month plus alpha tier. And here's an interesting little side story to Sean's, discovering of the podcast. So apparently somebody posted the last episode, the fake kanji episode, episode 22, on Reddit. And I guess several people discovered the podcast because of that. And Sean was one of them. So Sean, I'm so glad you enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining the Patreon. And if you want to join the Patreon, just like Sean and all the other wonderful, generous people over there, then head on over to japankyo.com/Patreon and sign up today.
We don't know the context for this one, so it makes it great.
Yeah.
Only male students must wear helmets inside school.
See, I have no idea where this came from. Like, it was a student that submitted it, but I can't think of a context where why only male students? Why
inside school? Inside school, yeah.
Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony and
I'm Ryan.
And today we're joined by someone else, a friend of ours, Miyuki. Hey, Miyuki.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, so Miyuki's coming in, she's calling in from Tokyo.
Yep.
So Miyuki, I've known her for several years, and since we're going to be talking about schools, I wanted to just have a general Japanese perspective, even though Miyuki has some unique experiences as well. But we'll talk about that more in a second. So Ichimon means one question, and every episode we ask a question about Japan and try to answer it and learn a little bit about Japan in the process. So today's question is, why are school rules in Japan so strict? All right. So Ryan did not attend Japanese high school, nor did I, but Miyuki did, but it's kind of a different school.
Different, right.
So let's see. I think there's a general awareness, even among Japanese people and many people outside of Japan, that Japanese schools have sometimes like to the point where they are just crazy and ridiculous, like very, very strict rules about certain things. And they are about like, school uniforms or, hairstyles and just various things. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But Ryan, you teach at a Japanese high school right now, right?
Yeah, so I actually work at two different high schools now. One is, I think, like a very stereotypical, normal Japanese high school. And the other is a little bit more special. It's kind of for students who had trouble in junior highs.
Mm-hmm.
So the normal high school is what you'd expect from Japan. Students wearing uniforms, no dyed hairs or crazy hairstyles.
Mm-hmm.
I've never expressly read like our rules wherever they're written, but if we have weird, strict rules, they don't seem to be enforced that strictly. The students generally have normal student freedom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of course, they have to wear uniforms and they don't dye their hair, though immediately after graduating, they all do, because they always like come back to have like a farewell and greeting for teachers who are leaving or coming after graduation. And usually like 80% of them have brown hair when they show up for that.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like I've noticed even elementary school students, like for their own graduation ceremony, like they all of a sudden come like really dressed up and like just they look very different from the typical, when they would go to school every single day. So.
It really is weird because it's only like maybe a week or two in between. So it's like little kids have their graduation ceremony and then leave, and then small adults come the next week.
That's cute. Kind of cute.
Yeah. To not say any names, I've heard many teachers say that like if they hassle the students too much, very obnoxious parents will come and complain. So unless something's a big deal, they kind of just like ignore it. And my students are generally pretty well behaved, so we don't really have many issues.
Okay.
My other high school, though, is very, very free. There is no dress code at all. So they do not wear uniforms. Some of them actually come like straight from work because they're a little bit older and they have jobs sometimes. So they'll be like in whatever their work clothes are. Most of them have dyed hair. Probably like half.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit, they're much more casual in how they talk with the teachers, but they're still pretty well behaved, I'd say. They don't really fight or anything.
Okay. So, all right. So I do have a couple experiences that I want to share because I also taught in Japan. But
Not too late. We
before
don't
we
care.
get to that, but before we get to that, I want to ask Miyuki. So, what can you say about your school experiences? What was it like? Was it strict? Was it not? What can you give us an insight into your school days?
Yeah, right. So just like Tony mentioned earlier, my own experience is like a little different, I would say. So the school I was going was a private school. And I think there are two types of private schools. One is like, how do I say, like preppy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like maybe the school rules are even more strict than typical public schools.
Right.
And then the other is like super like free, just like Ryan said. So students are given like much more leeway, like freedom. So we didn't have school uniforms at all.
Yeah.
And it was okay to wear makeups. It was okay to dye hair, and it was okay to do like crazy hairstyle.
And the school didn't just collapse into anarchy?
It wasn't madness and craziness.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a good point because maybe we'll talk about it later. But the one of the main reasons that why school rules are so strict is like a lot of teachers think schools are the place for study.
No learning, just study.
But well, maybe we can talk about that in a different day. But yeah, so no, it was all good.
Right. Yeah. So you didn't have to wear your hair like 5 centimeters over your shoulder or something crazy.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. So I saw some pretty strict things. I think at the junior high where I worked at, I was working in Kobe for 3 years, and my main school was a junior high. And that one, I saw some of like the classic examples of, for example, a student shows up one day with their hair dyed like either blonde or brown or whatever. And then, right by the staff room, there was another empty classroom. And it must have been like over an hour, I heard like the teacher that's in charge of discipline just yelling and yelling and yelling and yelling, like, and then they would bring in another teacher and they were just like yelling at the student, and it was like a huge like the end of the world because this kid dyed their hair. And then I remember another example, and this one it's just like, oh my god. So sitting in the staff room, you get to listen to the teacher meetings, right? And like every morning they have their teacher meeting and they'll discuss, just daily occurrences and news and things that they're going to do that day. And then one day I'm just there, I'm listening, and it has nothing to do with me. I just I'm there and I'm listening and I have nothing to do. So the discipline teacher starts talking about a big deal. Like they're talking about whether they can allow, I think it was specifically female students to use like hizakake, so like lap blankets. I think it was during a test, or maybe I can't remember if it was during the test or just in class in general. But they talked about this for, I don't know, like 15 minutes, and even at the end of that, like the issue still wasn't resolved.
You can't study if you're comfortable and warm.
Yeah, because the classrooms are cold, right? In the winter, like they get cold. There's no like central heating. So like I can feel like sympathy for these kids that are like stuck in these cold classrooms and they just want to, have a little blanket on their lap. And yet like it's this huge deal. Like, no, but if we let them do this, then it's going to be, something else. And to me, like that is one of the like most classic examples of like these huge discussions about something that to many people in a Western school seem like kind of pointless and like there's no need to make it such a big deal, right? But there are plenty examples of this if you look online.
So I kind of want to jump in because my school's not that strict. They actually are allowed to have blankets. We actually also do have centralized heating. So in the winter, our classes actually become like miserably hot. And the girls still wear blankets. It always surprises me because like the teachers will be sweating and there's girls like wrapped up to their necks in blankets. And it's like, how?
Wow.
But another thing I just remember is we actually have a very new rule. So we had issues with heat stroke here, even though we have centralized air conditioning too. So for the first time ever this year, they're allowed to drink water during class during a 1-minute break we give them in the middle of class.
Yes. I remember discussions about when they can drink water and all that. Yes.
And when this started, like, I was like, I'm glad we're finally letting them, but like, why not just let them drink water whenever they want? And I said this to a teacher, not even like an administrator, and her face looked horrified, like, oh, we can't do that. That would be rude. It's like, why?
That comes up a lot with like sports day, like the taikukai and all that. And, like, when can we have them drink water? It's like, oh, geez.
It's so weird because I don't think an adult is ever considered rude for drinking water.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like adults aren't in classrooms, but
there's the rappa nomi, right? Like drinking while walking outside, right? Like you're not supposed to do that. That's considered rude, I guess. So. I don't know.
I don't know. I personally don't know because it was okay for us to drink whatever we wanted during class.
Yeah. And then just really briefly, I worked at one other school, which was, well, I worked at 2 other schools, but one of them was a school for the blind. And that one was just super like relaxed. The kids didn't have to wear uniforms. I mean, classes were tiny, like 1 to 3 students usually.
Wow.
And like teachers really had like, very friendly, caring relationships with the students. And it was just, to me, like for various reasons, but it was just such a wonderful place and a great place to work at. And I loved like the time that I spent there because it wasn't like stressful. I was able to, make kind of a friendly relationship with these students and really, really tailor like the stuff that I was teaching them like to them individually. So that was a very, very different experience from the junior high where I worked at, which was a very much like the classic, super strict kind of Japanese school.
Okay, like again, the other school I work at, the more special one, exact same thing. The teachers have much better relationship with the students. And I was talking one last week, and even though the school has sort of a bad reputation because the like level of academics is lower, the teachers are like super happy and glad to work there because they get to actually interact with the students in a more personal way and like make better relationships and teach in a better fashion. So
Yeah. So Ryan, how about we discuss some of those crazy examples that I found?
Yeah, some of these are.
So, okay. So just a quick explanation. So, Miyuki, what is these school rules that we're talking about in Japanese? How do you say it?
Kōsoku.
Kōsoku ne. So kōsoku. So there are kōsoku's written what is it?
School and rule
and like rule. Yeah. So kōsoku. And if you look online, you find tons and tons of examples of like henna kōsoku, like weird school rules or like crazy school rules. And there's like surveys of students that, they submit like school rules from their school that don't make sense. And there's articles. I even found like a song by, was it Kamon Tatsuo, who is kind of like the Weird Al Yankovic of Japan. He writes like parody songs and stuff, and he is a very funny. I love him. I love the stuff that he does.
I do too.
Yeah, he's really funny. So I will include a link to that song where he talks about like real school rules that are like absolutely ridiculous. But I compiled a list. So Ryan, can you bring up a few? Let's discuss.
Yeah, sure. Let's just go through. I do want to real quick point out like these are not necessarily universal rules, and I think some of them had some reason maybe for being done that just doesn't make sense. I don't want to like stereotype Japan. So it's similar to like in the US where people find weird laws like you can't have ice cream in your back pocket on a Sunday.
Yes.
These are not normal. They're just weird things that exist for some reason.
Yeah. And some like I could find no context for them, so I just left them in because they were funny because they had no context.
Yes. I think we should. So the very first one we have is girls who shave their heads bald will be expelled.
Yeah.
Because, girls shaving their head bald is just a common problem all across Japan.
Hey.
So, Miyuki, have you ever shaved your head bald?
I haven't personally.
Not even to apologize?
I never thought of
no.
that. They can't apologize strongly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I have some friends who actually do that.
Oh.
Really? Wow.
Not in the back
Not
then,
in
not in my
apology.
school life, but not for apology, but
Just short, very, very short hair.
no, bald.
Just
Like
bald.
literally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I've
literally.
never, I don't think I've ever met anyone, a female that had like shaved
I'm
hair.
not a typical Japanese. So my friends are not typical Japanese either.
I thought you were going to say you're not
Okay.
typical. That's why you didn't shave your head, because typical Japanese girls do.
Typical Japanese. I don't want to say typical, but
Yeah. And that's
it's not a
another-
common. It's not a
exactly.
common, but it's part of a fashion.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I mean, that's great. That's great.
You should warn them. They might get
Um,
expelled if they try to become high school students again.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Maybe I should.
Just in case they
yeah.
wanted to go back again. Like,
Yeah. All right, Ryan. What's another
gosh.
one?
well, this one I think is probably fairly common, is you have to register your hair color when you start school. I think this is only for people who don't have black hair.
Right. So we'll discuss
get to
this a
hair
little bit
much
more
later.
later. But yeah, many schools they basically just want all students to have black hair because normal Japanese people have black hair, and that's what Japanese people should look like. So
Yeah.
there are some Japanese people that have naturally brown hair, and so schools will either make them dye their hair black, or in some cases the student has to present some picture or some proof that they were born with brown hair rather.
Okay, so now we'll get into some of the weirder ones. You must commute to school in shoes or geta.
So shoes or geta. Geta are those wooden clogs, right?
Yeah.
Like that you see in
Yep.
I don't know, like a long time ago.
So those
like
are
samurai.
acceptable. And shoes are acceptable, but nothing else.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like geta for inside the school.
I feel so. I have no idea, but I want to imagine like some kid was going to school on like rollerblades or something, or like, no, you can't do that. And then they made a rule that was like only shoes. But then there was one really traditional kid who like lived with the tengu, and he was coming in geta, and like, oh well, we have to let that be allowed.
Yeah, I guess geta are okay. So, Yuki, how often do you wear geta?
How many pairs do you own?
Actually, that's funny. I think I have. Let me. Two pairs of
Okay.
geta.
Are they for like
And-
yukata for like summer?
Yeah, exactly.
And for going to school.
And for going-
not for going to school. Only when I
maybe
wear
that's what it was.
yukata
Uh-huh.
for the like a fireworks festival thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's
Maybe some school had some like fireworks thing, and you could wear kimono too. I don't know.
maybe.
I'm just trying to think of a situation, or maybe graduation. If they came in kimono, they wanted to wear geta with it. I don't
True.
know.
Yeah. I mean that's possible.
We don't wear geta with kimono.
Yukata.
I'm just trying to think of some context why this would be there.
Possibilities, right?
All right. Next one, Ryan.
Students will do their absolute best in the folk dance.
Yeah. I love that one. Yeah. So for like the usually it's like Bunkasai, right? Like the cultural festival. They'll do like the
Or
folk dance.
sports festival.
Oh, okay.
Either
Okay.
way, yeah.
Yeah. They do like they'll train, they'll practice for many weeks for like this like folk dance, like big coordinated routine, I guess. And I guess they just have to do their best. They have to.
I'm guessing this one was like a joke just to like encourage the kids.
I hope so. I hope so.
I hope so.
What's another good one?
Students can stay home from school if a horse or cow they own has given birth. From what I see, there's no time limit. So like if it gave birth 10 years ago, you're good.
I don't know if it's a funny thing though, actually. Maybe like
Well, yeah, like in a super.
It's just more like, it sounds very old fashioned considering like I don't think people in Tokyo are going to have many horses. and cows.
yeah. So maybe like the schools in Hokkaido.
Right, yeah. And there are like Nogyo Koko, like an agricultural kind of geared high school. So, all the students there are studying to like do farming or agricultural things. So, yeah, they could have livestock at home.
Like stock raising farmers.
Yeah, exactly.
There are a bunch of families.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe even today they still have this rule that applies.
Yeah, it seems possible. I mean, the article that I found that one in was not that old. It was probably like 2015 or whatever. So, I mean, that definitely seems like it still could be around. And like without any context, it's funny, but you can come up with a context where
that one's
exactly.
Okay, I'll go into the like completely crazy ones then, since we'll skip through some. Girls must glue their socks to their legs so they don't fall down.
So I think in the 90s it was like glue socks, and then like the big socks were very popular, right?
Yeah.
But I guess like there's still glue sock. You can still find the glue for the socks so that they don't fall down.
I mean, there still is that glue.
Yeah.
For that purpose, and just like I mentioned earlier, like preppy school for girls, Ojo-sama Gakko.
Yeah.
I think those students are even today they are told to do so. Maybe.
Wow. Well, those a lot of times you get the socks that are a little bit under the knee, right? And I guess those are easy, like they fall down easily, right?
Maybe. Sorry, I don't have that old experience, so I'm just guessing, trying to guess.
I was trying to guess too, but there are probably still schools out there that require you to glue your socks on.
It's crazy.
I just love that sentence. Like, okay, go glue your socks on.
Your socks are falling. Get more glue. All right, what's maybe last one, I guess?
Okay, this is because we don't know the context for this one, so it makes it great.
Yeah.
Only male students must wear helmets inside school.
See, I have no idea where this came from. Like, it was a student that submitted it, but I can't think of a context where why only male students? Why inside school?
Inside school, yeah.
Yeah, like baiku, right? Like if you were on a motorcycle, yeah, okay, or bicycle or something, like that makes sense. But take it off and then you go into school, right? Like what? Why?
No, you have to leave it on. Except the women, they can take it off.
Yeah, the girls can don't have to wear the helmet.
So I skipped a lot of rules that were like girls can't do something because it might excite the male students.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the same thing. A girl in a helmet might excite the male students. So they can't wear the helmet, but the men have to.
It's kind of too much for the boys. So yeah, there's a bunch of those, like the ponytail. You can't wear a ponytail because
ponytails are banned.
What was it?
They have to wear their PE uniform under their sailor uniform.
Yeah. That's because
pigtails are banned, I think was another one.
Probably at some school, yeah. So yeah, it's all about.
I mean, the gluing your socks thing is also for the same reason.
Could be, yeah. Exactly.
All right. So let's take a break here, and then we'll come back and talk about the hair stuff and all that. Hey, Tony here. So I've got a few, I guess you could say, Japankyo podcast announcements, updates, information, blah, blah, blah. So first of all, I know Ichimon Japan has not been on the most consistent release schedule. It's been fluctuating a little bit, but I've settled on a schedule. What I'm going to be doing is releasing episodes on the 7th and 21st of the month. Now, I say that Ichimon Japan is a monthly podcast. So what I'll say here is that you're always going to get an episode on the 7th, and pretty much always you're going to get an episode on the 21st. If I'm short on time, then the episode on the 21st is the first one that I'm going to cut. And if I'm super, super short on time, something unexpected is going on, then of course I will let you know that maybe I can't release any episodes on a given month. But that seems like it would be quite rare. But you never know, right? So of course I will let you guys know. But for the time being, you can expect episodes on the 7th and 21st. Also, make sure to check out Japan Station. The latest episode features Shu Murakami, a stand-up comedian based in Toronto, Canada, who was originally from Japan, almost dropped out of high school, and through a series of just really interesting events, ended up doing stand-up comedy in Toronto. So I highly recommend checking that episode out. Episode 45, you can find it at japanstationpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, if you're part of the Patreon, then good news because you are getting access to around 10 minutes of extra content. And I'm going to be including that content at the end of the episode after the outro music. That is all content that was in the conversation between Ryan, Miyuki, and I. And it was all good content. It's just I wanted to keep the main part of the episode nice and tight. And so I ended up cutting that stuff out, but it's still fun stuff. So I'm putting it as bonus content at the end of this episode for the patrons. And if you want to sign up and get access to that bonus content, then head on over to japankyo.com/Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month. Doesn't matter how much you contribute, you are going to get access to that bonus 10 minutes or so at the end of the episode. All right. So with that done, we are ready to get back to the show. All right, so we found another one that we forgot to mention of these funny, crazy school rules. So, Ryan, what was the one that we forgot to mention?
You are not allowed to wear a fundoshi in the pool.
So, fundoshi is like this old-fashioned Japanese underwear, usually worn by men. It's kind of like a loincloth, like you would see
Usually not young men.
nowadays. It's only by like old men.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering like who these students were.
So I don't know. So maybe
It has me wondering though, like, is the helmet okay in the pool, or are you required to wear the helmet in the pool?
yeah, well, maybe the helmet school and the fundoshi school are the same place, right? All right. So one of the, we were alluding to this a little bit earlier, but one of the biggest things in this discussion of school rules is like people's hair, right? Students' hairs, particularly if you have curly hair or if you have naturally brown hair, you can have a really tough time in school. And so, like, I've seen reports of like schools that require you to bring in a picture of yourself if you have like naturally curly hair, for example, right? Because they don't allow students to perm their, to get a perm so that it's straight. So they won't allow any student to get a perm. No, wait. They don't allow students to perm their hair so that it's curly, right? Right, Miyuki? I think that's the thinking. So then they don't want any students with curly hair at all. So they have those students with naturally curly hair bring in a picture that they say, oh, I was born with curly hair, and then they can give them an exception.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for all the cases when they don't.
Yeah, and then there's cases where they don't, and then there are cases when you hear of students having to perm their hair straight, even though like it's naturally curly, and so
Perming is forbidden, but unless you're doing it this way, then it's okay.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nobody can perm it unless it's to make it straight.
Crazy.
Yeah, so you get these weird exceptions that like contradict the rules because again, the thinking is everybody has to look the same. And
I'll say even at my school, so we have some students who are not from Japan, but even among the Japanese students, there's a fair amount to have maybe not curly, but like definitely very wavy hair.
Yeah.
So it's not that rare.
Yeah, it's not that rare. I mean, there's even a word for it in Japanese that I learned very quickly when I was in Japan because I have pretty naturally wavy / curly hair. Tennenpama, right?
Tennenpama, yep.
Like natural perm. Right? My hair is naturally permed. But the other big deal in these school rules is naturally brown hair. And so you hear of cases where a student that has brown hair naturally, some Japanese people do have naturally brown hair, they end up having to dye their hair black in order to attend school and just go to school like a normal person.
But dyeing is prohibited.
Yeah, but dyeing your hair to like yellow or red or whatever, any other color, or even brown, is prohibited. So again, you get these weird contradictions. And there's a very well-known case that popped up in the past couple of years. I think it was in 2017, where a female student at a high school in Osaka actually ended up suing the Osaka school board because she was being forced to dye her hair black. And then when she stopped, because she, according to the allegations, she was getting like rashes in her scalp from dyeing the hair. They stopped letting her attend school and school events, and so she stopped being able to go to school. So she sued, or her family, I guess, sued the school, the board, for the equivalent of almost $20,000, and that is still being delegated in the courts. It seems, as far as I could tell, as of mid 2020, there hadn't been a decision. So yeah, this, assuming, these are allegations, and assuming that, it is everything accurate what she's saying, then, even in cases like that, there are some schools that say like, no, you just have to dye your hair, even if you're getting rashes or whatever, like, we don't care, you have to do it. And then, that can lead to a whole bunch of other problems, which, unfortunately they can't go to school and all that stuff. So, why? So the question that we started with was why are these schools doing these like really, really strict rules? So there's a couple of things that we did to try to find out why, but I think one thing we can start with is Miyuki. You asked a few of your friends to get some of their views on these school rules, right?
Yeah. So I talked with my friends last night, friends from universities, and they all went to all-girl school, high school. So the roles they had were like particularly focused on like girls thing, like wearing makeups or, all that thing.
Shaving their heads.
We didn't talk about that, but maybe there was that role.
No fundoshi.
No fundoshi.
No fundoshis in the
for
pool.
Girls, yeah.
So they didn't have to worry about helmets, though.
No, they didn't have to. Thanks God. But so all of them said that teachers explained the reasons why, why students should do this or why shouldn't do that. And there were mainly two reasons. One reason was the schools are for the studying. So like they just had to focus on studying and nothing else, kind of thing. So so the students didn't have to try to make them look prettier. It has nothing to do with studying, that kind of thing. Right, and then another rule that they mentioned was so the teachers pretty much tell their female students not to be like showy, not to be spotted. How do I say? They're like really strict rules, especially the ones that relates to appearance of the female students, are to, I would say, to protect them.
Interesting. From other students, from like getting made fun of or something like that?
Could be one. That could be one. And another one could be by strangers.
Oh.
So like teachers tell students not to like stand out, not to show off, because that is the most, I don't know how to say, like the most cost efficient measurement to protect them from becoming a victim of child molester or like upskirt photo. Yeah. And that is like, that's embarrassing to say that, because that's part of how poorly Japanese government is dealing with all those sexual harassment and crimes.
Yeah.
But and they all said that their teachers explained them.
Interesting.
Not this directly, but kind of like pretty much this kind of thing.
Wow.
And they said it all made sense.
Yeah.
They said, oh, okay, if that's the reason, I'll follow, kind of.
Oh, I mean,
I've heard. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, with a lot of these rules, like it comes from like good intentions, right? But the execution is not really fixing the bigger problem. Anyway, Ryan, you were gonna say.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I think my perspective is a bit more negative. I don't think it comes from good intentions. I think it really is they want people to be a certain way and they just look for a reason for that later on.
Oh, there is that too. Yeah.
Because another growing issue is in Japan, as with the rest of the world, there's a growing number of people, or at least a more vocal number of people who want to wear, if there is uniforms, want to wear the uniform of the other gender. Which it's already the school approved uniform. It's not breaking any of their rules, but the schools have traditionally been very against that.
Yeah. I mean, when I was thinking about that rule that we mentioned, where you have to wear your PE clothes under the sailor uniform, I was thinking, okay, that is one solution, I guess, or you could just allow girls to wear pants.
Exactly.
Yes. Even beyond like wanting to wear the other gender's clothes, there's a large number of girls who just want to wear pants because it's warmer in the winter and just generally more comfortable.
Yeah.
And then I would say girls should wear PE uniform under their school uniform, or ponytails are not allowed. You know, because they around male students, kind of thing. That is even a humiliation. I mean, like not all boys are like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. and you're blaming the girls for a problem that might exist with the boys.
Yeah, with some boys, right? You're blaming
with some boys
for a problem that exists with maybe like a couple of boys.
I mean, this entire like gender role and like sexual issues that Japan as a society has been dealing with poorly, not well enough.
Yeah.
Have they been dealing with it at all? I mean, that's not fair. There has been some progress, though. It's very slow.
But like little by little.
Yeah. There are plenty of people that are thinking about this seriously and doing things to try to get the people in power to do things about them. But unfortunately, there are many things done by the people of power that don't really accomplish anything. So
there is definitely a substantial amount of people trying very hard to change things. The government has just been very resistant to it.
Yes. Yeah. So that,
I mean,
that
it's
is,
not. Go ahead. No. I was just going to say that's not just a Japan thing. That's worldwide.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about Japan here, but that doesn't mean that these problems are exclusive to Japan. So
this is a Japan podcast, which is why we're focused on it. But we're not meaning to imply this is exclusive to Japan.
We'll have to do like One Question America next. I don't want to do that.
From the American viewers. Why is America America?
Oh God. But yeah, that is an interesting perspective that I hadn't heard, but it makes total sense, right? Like trying to protect you and this kind of way of thinking where, I mean, I guess
like trying to protect you with shame.
Yeah, protecting through shaming. Oh, goodness. But yeah, so I did find some historical reasons for why there are so many of these sometimes ridiculous and seemingly pointless rules. So as I think anybody that is familiar with anime or maybe some TV shows and movies from like that take place in the 1970s and 80s in Japan, you may remember that there were a lot of like inter-school fights and violence and, motorcycle gangs and those guys with like the pompadour, the rizento, right, in Japanese. And, they would always get in fights and in their school uniforms. So that is something that, is a reflection of something that was going on in the 70s and 80s where school violence was a problem. And
maybe the helmet thing.
Oh.
You might get attacked by a rival school gang, so wear your helmet.
Wear your helmet, yeah.
Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, you figured it out. Figures it out.
That must be it.
Jeez.
But it's specifically in the school you have to wear it. So I guess it's in case an enemy school raid comes.
Yeah,
you have
they
to be
show up at your
prepared.
school randomly. You have to be prepared.
Or even between students of the same school.
Oh.
Like there are groups of the Furyo students and fight each other
and women,
against each other.
I get it. And women don't wear it because if they did wear it, we wouldn't know if their head was shaved or not.
That must be it.
Good job, guys. Wow. Jeez.
We figured it out.
Ta-da!
So in the 70s and 80s, kids were fighting and doing a whole bunch of stuff, and they were getting in motorcycle gangs and all that. And so the reaction of the Japanese education system was to get really, really strict. But according to, there's this well-known education commentator who pops up on Japanese TV quite a bit. I remember watching him in like the early 2010s when I was living in Japan. I'm not sure if I haven't seen him on that much lately, but still around. I went to his blog, Naoki. I think it's Naoki Ogi.
Yes.
Nickname is Ogi Mama, right? It's well known as
Yep.
Ogi Mama. And he explains that around the 90s, the schools started to kind of change their tune. They became a little more relaxed and not so super strict. The emphasis became like kind of building relationships with students. But that ended up not working out as well as they wanted, I guess. And then once we come into the 2000s, we start getting like strict rules again, and we're still dealing with these like sometimes absurdly strict rules. So
Yeah, you can feel that now.
yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person in Japan is in favor of these rules.
Not in the least bit.
No, not at all. Miyuki found a article that delved into this aspect of it. It was in the Nishi Nihon Shimbun, I believe, and it goes into some of the reasons why people, think these rules are, why they have them. For example, one school principal from Shizuoka was explaining, kind of like what Miyuki was saying. It's to keep order, and school is for learning or studying or whatever. It's not for anything else. It's kind of like, classic sort of justification for it. We need order in the schools. And then another interesting reason given was, like, for example, in vocational schools, they need to teach the students the kind of basic things that they need in order to work, right? So if you go become a mechanic, you're going to have to wear a uniform and certain things. So they have to have certain expectations of the kinds of things that they're going to have to do later on once they enter the workforce. But there was a survey in that article by Procter and Gamble Japan that mentioned, let's see, I think it was 87%.
Yep. Yeah, it says 87%. Yeah.
Okay, so it said 87% of there was 1,000 people surveyed, 600 junior high and high school students, and 400 teachers. 87% of them had doubts about school rules as they stand today, and 70% said that school rules should reflect like modern times and be changed accordingly. And 69% of students also had their doubts about the school rules, right? They weren't particularly in favor of the school rules, but only 9% of students had actually talked to teachers about why we have these school rules. Like particularly multiple times it's mentioned like the schools or rules regulating like hair, right? In the article. So the focus of the survey might have been hair color and that kind of stuff, but they also use kōsoku a lot, so I'm not sure if they meant general school rules or hair rules. But either way, only 9% had actually talked to their teachers about why they have these rules. And the conclusion of the Procter & Gamble Japan people, according to this article, is that both teachers and students have their doubts about these rules, but they have very few opportunities to discuss them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to point out two things real quick, because you mentioned the 69% of students having doubts about the rules. Among teachers, 70% had doubts about the rules.
Interesting that it's so close, right?
It's actually slightly higher than the students.
Yeah.
And I want to say, like, as a teacher, my experience is very much like that. Most of the teachers think the rules are too strict or unnecessary, but just like don't know how to go about changing it. Or don't think they can change it. So it's just like, well, it's just how it is.
One interesting thing that was mentioned in that article that I found kind of funny, but also sad if you look at it a certain way. There was a mention of one staff room of a school where the teachers got into a discussion about one, like the belt color and shape or whatever. Okay, that one wasn't that funny, but the other one was like, at what point, if the hair touches the eyebrow, at what point will that constitute a violation of the rule, right? Like, so they were talking about like, specifically what point on the eyebrow, right? Like, it's really, like, they have to like talk about it in that detail, that much amount of detail, but.
I'm actually curious, like, is it if it's natural hanging or is it if you like squish it against your forehead? Because that could affect the length.
Exactly. Good point.
So, I mean, I think there's probably plenty of teachers that are, get frustrated about like, really, like, do we have to talk about this? But generally speaking,
Yeah.
it seems like the environment for discussing these things is not so like friendly.
I feel like whoever's making these rules, like the government of Japan, is significantly more old-fashioned than the people of Japan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of these schools, what happens is, so one day a student shows up. So let's say the rule is your hair cannot touch the eyebrow. Okay. But then one day a student shows up with the hair like right in between both eyebrows. So then the teacher,
just like a single spike down to the
one
nose.
spike coming down like in between the eyebrows. And then the teachers go like, oh wait, is that a violation or not? So then they have to have a big meeting about whether that's a violation. And then, they spend like a week talking about whether they have to ban that. And then they have to make a specific rule that says, no hair can go between the eyebrows, right?
So then you do another one where it's like, it starts at your forehead, but then it like curves out around and down your cheeks.
So yeah, it just keeps going and going and going. And then they have to do like, it cannot be 5 centimeters from the eyebrow and blah, 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 blah. That seems to be the solution rather than like, is there really a point to us like making a rule about the eyebrows? Like,
But most schools go like the other way, just ban everything.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. No hair.
Like no exception. No hair. Yeah, maybe but the bald.
yeah,
Except for the girls.
But yeah, just don't like make rule individually and apply that rule to one or two specific persons individually. But just ban everything. That's like easier. And,
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to mention, I found a message board where a high schooler, I think it was a high schooler, maybe it was like a third year junior high school student, wrote this very like well-written, thoughtful post about like, in people educate us about what matters in a person is their insides, right? Like how they think, what kind of person they are. So hair color shouldn't be that big a deal. Like why are school rules, so strict about hair color? Like when you shouldn't be judging a person by their appearance. And it's very well written, nice post. And then you get a bunch of like, just very annoying responses. But a couple people basically say, Japanese people that dye their hair yellow or blonde or red or whatever, they don't have a good sense of color, right? Like they lack a sense of color, and like because yellow or red hair just doesn't look good on Japanese people, so don't dye your hair yellow or blonde or whatever. It just doesn't look good on Japanese people. So like. Really? Like
yes, it has nothing to do with all the rules and excuses they make. They just don't like what it looks like.
Yeah, it's just Japanese people do not look good as blondes, so you shouldn't do it. No. Like one, that's besides the point, and two, it's like whether a person looks good with whatever color hair, it's really ultimately up to. It's a subjective thing, right? Like they're not gonna they can't decide that, right? So yeah, there's plenty of people that offer all kinds of like answers that I think many of us would not make any sense. So yeah.
So this kind of reminded me of something I wanted to bring up earlier about the Tokyo's public policy on dyeing your hair.
Oh,
We didn't really go into it, but they had the same issue with, I think, people with natural color hair being forced to dye it black. Mm-hmm. And then I think Tokyo themselves just said that's okay. And they wanted to make it so that it said on their website that you were that you did not have to dye your hair if it was a different color, but then people fought against that
Yeah.
because they said the website is for promoting the things that make the schools unique and special.
So
Yet, like, the students aren't allowed to be unique and special, and you're not allowed to tell the students that they're allowed to have their natural hair color and be unique and special
Yeah.
because we need to use this website to talk about how the schools are unique and special.
Yeah, I think that was a Japan
point.
Times article. Right? Yeah.
And I guarantee no one saw any contradiction when they were saying that argument.
Yeah, well, contradictions, like we said, hair color and all that. Like, there's plenty of contradictions, and the goal, as long as they accomplish their goal of making everybody look the same, right? Then those proponents of those rules are happy, right? So yeah, but not everybody agrees with it. I think we made that pretty clear, but this is still pretty widespread.
Yeah, actually, most teachers don't agree with it according to surveys.
79
Overwhelmingly.
or 80?
Yeah,
It was 70, yeah.
80%,
yeah. So somewhere between 70 to 87% at some level kind of question these rules. So according to this.
I'm happy to say we have a new principal at my school who I've never talked to directly about this, but I feel he's one who's trying to change things because he's the one who implemented our water drinking is okay policy.
Okay,
That's
little
cool.
steps. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been trying to make the school a more welcoming, more fun place for students, especially now with Corona and masks and all that.
True, yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah.
That's true.
A bunch of other rules that let's not get into.
Yeah. Yeah, he actually had a mini meeting where he announced he wanted school to be a fun, welcoming place.
Nice.
So now it's kind of silly because we don't have a big budget, but he actually has music playing and they put little tents up to greet the students when they arrive just to make it more like a fun event.
It's nice. It's nice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So school rules. Why so many? Because a bunch of kids with pompadours in the 70s and 80s got into a whole lot of fights. And so Japan's school system decided to just make up a bunch of rules. All right. So I think we covered that. We figured out the whole helmet problem and all that stuff. So we did a good job.
Yeah,
A bowl problem.
Yeah.
I'll need to start bringing my helmet to my school to set a good example for my students.
All right. So subscribe, rate, review, blah, 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 do all that stuff. And you can send questions to ichimon@japankyo.com. And again, thank you, Miyuki, for coming on. It was wonderful to have you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
All right.
It was fun.
All right. Bye.
Bye.